This empty chair represents the addict who died today, not knowing recovery was possible.
And welcome to another episode of The Empty Chair. In a couple of minutes, Cole will introduce our guest, but I want to thank you for tuning in, and I'd like to tell you a little bit of the MVP ASAP, Merrimack Valley Prevention Substance Abuse Project. I hate that long name.
So just say MVP
ASAP.
Keep
and
it simple.
what I want you to know is, if you know anyone, a family that's struggling with someone, neighbor, someone you work with, doesn't matter what, please give us a call. Cole, myself, we provide services, support. I know it's hard, it's uncomfortable, you have that, you feel a little embarrassed. My wife and I, Fran, we invite you over our house, kind of introduce it to you, kind of help you deal with someone who's suffering from addiction, or someone who's dealing with early recovery, where our parents can be kind of pests, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been told that. So that being said, and we'll mention it again, anything to do with substance abuse, please reach out to us. If you have the organizations, groups, whatever, please reach out to us. We do coffee hours and whatnot like that. It's all about education. Don't be the not my kid parent. It could be deadly. And now Cole will introduce.
Yeah, no, and one of the other things that we're adding on right now is we're reaching out to companies, organizations, churches, dentist offices. We've been blessed to have already had 3 companies that have brought us in during their lunch hour to speak about recovery, about what resources are available from Merrimack Valley Prevention and Substance Abuse Project. So if you think that you're interested in having either us over for breakfast at your organization or on your lunch hour or even after work, we would love to come in and share lived experiences, prevention ideas, and offer a lot of resources to your organization.
It's only fair to warn you, we eat a lot.
Yeah. By the looks of us too, I think they can tell. You didn't have to tell them. Yes.
Well, they say the camera adds 50 pounds.
Yes, exactly. Thank you for that.
Oh, 10 pounds? Okay.
So every talk show that we do, either whether it be a podcast or a live show, I just like to keep everyone updated because the overdose they've not gone away. And that's why it's so important that we continue to host this type of show so we can offer hope for individuals that listen, prove that people do recover, and offer many resources that are available for families and individuals that may need them. So in the Merrimack Valley, we have had 50 overdoses through the month of January, and of those 50, 12 of them were fatal. And those numbers are the reasons why Merrimack Valley Prevention and Substance Abuse Project continues to advocate, share prevention ideas and resources with individuals so that we can help people just stop this whole thing and decrease the stigma. So it's really important to us. Tonight's really fun because it's all about being young and being in recovery, because if newcomers saw no joy or fun in our existence, they wouldn't want recovery. So we absolutely insist on enjoying life. And tonight you might be confused because Harmony was supposed to be here, but her child is sick. So we were so blessed that Nicole was able to step up and step in and be with us tonight.
You know how to harmonize.
Yeah.
I could try.
Okay.
Sure, and I know Harmony was so upset that she's not here and she's listening. So Harmony, we love you. And if you're a believer like I am, then you do know that everything is happening the way that it's supposed to. And we're just blessed to have you here in our presence. And thank you for saying yes so quickly, because she was trying to fight it throughout the whole day, and then she was just like, I can't do it. And I know you got concerned, you're not coming, are you? And I'm like, no, she's sick, so she's not. So I'd just love to introduce Nicole and Christopher. Christopher I've known for a very long time. I've witnessed his journey. I've witnessed bumps in his journey. And I've witnessed how you have matured so much through every crisis and victory that you have gone through to be the man that you are today and what you're doing in recovery. And Nicole, I look forward to hearing your story and your testimony on how and why you got sober and remain sober, because you two are the young faces in recovery. When I was sober in 1987, we were blessed to have clubhouses. We had the Road Back Club in Salem, New Hampshire, and it was there. And that's a huge part of why I'm sober as long as I am, because I was around other people. And at that time, there wasn't as many as young as myself. As there is today. You have kids getting sober at 16 because of how dangerous and addicting the drugs are, that they're turning it around. And Dr. Ruth Pote, she's an amazing doctor out of Northampton, Massachusetts, and she speaks so much about the brain and how important it is if you can keep your child off of drugs up to the age of 25. They have like a 90 to 100% of not becoming an addict, because the brain is growing, and the younger that it is, the larger percent it is, whether it's in their family or not. And I just find that so fascinating. I know I'm sober as long as I am, because there is a statistic that if you do recovery in conjunction to therapy, your longevity of recovery. So that's why I know I sit here with 36 years of recovery. I was in therapy for 10 years along with my program, and I know that is why I am here doing it the way that I am. So that being said, welcome to the both of you. Thank you again for being here. I know we want to hear a little bit about your testimony, a little bit about how, why, what, and what leads you folks here today, and then we'll have some questions for you throughout your story. So it's ladies before gentlemen. So tell us a little bit about you, Nicole.
So my name's Nicole.
Yes.
I'm 34 years old. I grew up here in Salem,
Yep.
New Hampshire, and I would say I knew that I had a problem with substances pretty early on, in that I was getting in a lot of trouble school aged around 16, my sophomore year in high school. I was suspended for a week with a drug-related incident, came back, and 5 days later I was suspended for another 10 days, another drug-related incident. I was arrested from school.
What were you using back then?
Mostly alcohol and marijuana.
Okay.
And the offenses were for marijuana.
Okay, sure.
And I had to go to an expulsion hearing with the superintendent, and basically fight for myself to get back into high school. Not a position I ever thought I would be in. There was always this, why me, like, ungrateful, empty feeling. I have a big family, 10 cousins. We all grew up in the same school district. We always get together. My parents worked really hard to give us what we had. I was involved in cheerleading for 7 years. You know, I had a pretty nuclear family and upbringing, and there was still this like hole that I felt, an insecurity, always feeling like an outsider in a room full of people, and drugs and alcohol took that away. It shut it off. It shut off the wheels in my head, and it worked as a solution to kind of numb out from that inner angst and dissatisfaction that I had about my life at an early age. And that went on for years. My senior year, I barely graduated. I appreciate you mentioning therapy, because that was a huge part of my story too. Before I could admit to the substance abuse, my mom gently guided me into therapy at 10, and I was in therapy on and off for till present day. And And it was extremely helpful at gaining the insight that I needed to even just have the language to describe what I was feeling and what was going on inside of me. I was escalated my senior year in high school. I started experimenting with other substances, opiates being the biggest one. OxyContin was everywhere.
Oh, yeah,
and,
that was
I was in with a crew of friends, and that's what we did.
Wow.
And I remember being 17 and driving home one night and nodding off and coming to on the other side of the road.
Wow.
And no one was on the road, thank God, but it was that signpost for me, like, what are you doing with your life? I'm supposed to be going to college and thinking about a career, and like I'm almost an adult, and my life was in shambles, like inside and out. So I started seeing a substance abuse counselor specifically, and that's really where I admitted my problem for the first time. And he had mentioned support groups and things, and I wasn't really interested. I just thought if I could, I stopped hanging out with the people, the places, and the things. I pretty much isolated. I got accepted to a school in northern Vermont and kind of hucked up my bootstraps with all my might and went to college. And my parents dropped me off. I said goodbye, and within 2 hours, I was right back where I was. I had the freedom and the means, and within 30 days, I had to leave on a medical exit. I had stopped going to classes completely. I got a DUI underage, and I decided to go inpatient to a treatment facility.
Now, how old were you now?
I was 18.
Wow.
Okay.
Yep. I turned 19 in rehab. It was a 30-day program, Valley Vista in Vermont.
Yeah.
It was funny because serendipity and believing that everything happens for a reason, it was like the basis of how I developed a faith in something bigger than myself, which I feel is absolutely necessary for my recovery today. It helps with the gratitude, it helps with the acceptance. In a 24-hour period, you know, the way that I think, my default is to be irritable and restless and discontent. And that's part of my disease, I've learned. And so believing in something greater and that the wheels are working for me and things are happening for a reason has completely transformed my life. And so I mention that because the treatment center I went to, we have a summer camp in Vermont, and I lived there in the summers growing up. And it was on the way. I had passed this place a million times and didn't even know it existed. And when I was being dropped off, it was another one of those little moments. So I was introduced to a 12-step program in that facility. And when I came back home to my hometown, I started attending those meetings and tried to make a beginning. I went back. I had 4 months clean and sober, and I went back to the same college with the same people and the same things. And
Now, if I remember, when we first came in here, you said you had 3 years clean.
I do.
And you started really at 18.
Yeah.
So, I'm not the brightest guy in the
Yeah.
world, but I'm going to say you had a few bumps along the
I
road.
did. Yeah. Yeah, I had 4 months, and then I drank again. It always started with alcohol for me because
Sure.
it was easy to justify. It's socially acceptable.
Right.
I didn't think I had a problem with alcohol for a long time because drugs worked
Yeah,
for me.
me too.
Yeah. And so I relapsed for another 7 years. In that time, I dropped out of college. I totaled 2 vehicles. I got pregnant with my son at 23, and I got sober again shortly after in 2015, after my son was about 2 years old. And that's when, actually, funny story, my very first meeting back after that 7-year relapse, I went to a local noontime meeting, and Christopher was there. And Christopher and I actually grew up together. My cousin lived right next to him, and we all played on the same street. We grew up together, the same friend group, and I couldn't believe that that's where I ran into him. And we started chatting, and we just happened to land in this place in our life decades later, right down the street from each other, and we kind of just were glued at the hip, and we started our journey in recovery. We started hanging out with sober people, going swimming, just going for joyrides, listening to music, finding events and dances and bowling, and I had no idea how many activities there were. We stayed in the program for 3 years, and at the 3-year mark, I kind of woke up to my addiction to people and places and things. I was physically sober, but I was still trying to control the relationships in my life. And being pregnant at 23 and not having that nuclear family and that partner, there was so much shame around that, and I did everything I absolutely could to try and fill that void with a lot of toxic relationships and being around people that I had no business being with. And that's essentially what took me back out. Is I didn't devote myself to the work that was necessary to have an inward change.
You found out it's not just about being clean.
It's not. So physically sober, I'm almost more goofed up inside than I am with a drink and a drug in me, because this disease has nothing to do. Alcohol and drugs were my solution to what was actually going on inside of me. And I had no idea, I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I hit a whole nother bottom in sobriety with my addiction to people and relationships. And I had to take a period of time in therapy with just a few close women, and really work on that and feel all the loneliness and cry and walk through the healing. And there were so many low points, but it was necessary for me to accept myself wholeheartedly, everything that had happened to me, everything that might happen to me. Fear is what's underlying this disease. And my fear of being alone, and my fear of you judging me, and my fear of not getting what I need rule every single decision that I make. And so if somehow I can take a leap of faith that if I ask for the fear to be removed, if I know that's the problem, prayer, meditation, like inward seeking, quietness, the pause, these are all tools that I use today when that fear crops up, because otherwise I'm going to start controlling my life. I'm going to start acting out. I had no idea that the anger that I had wasn't because my life wasn't good. It was because I was riddled with fear and blamed everyone else for it.
Yeah.
And so this time around, September 12th of 2020 was, I didn't really know if I was going to make it back. It gets harder and harder. It gets harder and harder. That drink, that drug, that pill, whatever, you never know. If you have this thing and you're sick, and it is a disease, I absolutely believe it. When I pick up, it could be in the ground for me.
Oh, yeah.
And now, the stuff that you're picking up is nothing like the stuff that we used to do.
Yeah.
And that's where I get nervous with anyone who has any type of recovery to say, like, what's on the streets right now,
It's horrendous.
it's horrendous. It's nothing. I just witnessed my friend who's in on a Section 35, and I said, what happened? Like, please, because I need to know. Like, how did you have that much time? And look where you are. And to witness how hard he is struggling to beat this is devastating to watch. And I just kept on saying to him, this isn't the same stuff that we were doing back in the day. This is something that is horrific. It is so addicting.
Yeah, you don't get many chances.
You really don't.
don't.
And the fact that you were able to come back and you had that experience of that stuff, like, thank you, Jesus, you made it back. Like, you're a miracle. You could have been a statistic. Your son could have been without a mom, you know, and so I'm really glad that you've had this turnaround. And what did you do differently in recovery that's made you stay these past 3 years?
I think that putting my recovery, whether that be service work in a 12-step program, step work in a 12-step program, and fellowship connection with other sober people first. Putting it first above everything else, especially the recovery aspect of it.
Yep.
And I don't know how to run my life. It's been shown time and time again. So remaining teachable, and the biggest thing for me was accepting that my life was exactly how it's supposed to be. And what's helped the most in that is when I meet new women that walk through the door of a meeting who don't have hope, who I see myself 3-4 years ago. All of those things that happened to me in my life that I regretted or felt shame about or wished never happened are my greatest tools to share with these other women and let them know that they're not alone and that there is a way out, to be an example of the other side of
To
that
offer
remorse.
hope.
Yeah.
When you share your testimony of what you went through, and that newcomer sitting there ready to, like, am I going to die? And then they see someone like yourself go through it. They're like, there's that spark of hope, and that's all it takes, is that spark of hope to say, wow, I'm going to follow this young lady around. And we don't always get to pick what path we went through to get here, but everything we did go through, all of us, is a huge, there's a reason behind it, you know, and it's to be of service to others that God is going to put in our way along our journey to have that part come through up.
Well, we're glad you're here.
Yeah, me too.
What about you?
My name's Christopher.
Hi, Christopher.
Hey, Cole. Thank you for having me. And thank you for coming on such short notice. 40 years old. I don't look it. Some days
Nor do you act it.
Yeah, I do act it now.
No.
Sometimes I feel it in the mornings, but most of the time I'm inspired by just recovery in general. I love watching people get blessed and see the come-ups and see the spark come back in people's eyes. And you just mentioned hope, and like, hope is a very powerful thing when you recognize that you don't have any, you know.
Yep.
And I was there. Like, I was there. Like, I had everything taken from me. You know, I gave everything to this disease and to drugs and alcohol, and like, it gave nothing back. It just kept taking and taking, and, you know, promising me the world, and it never did, you know.
How old were you when you started experimenting, Chris?
I was 11 when I took my first drink. I stole
You were
it.
a late bloomer. Huh?
Yeah, late. But here's the thing, right? With that type of stuff, it's like I had stolen a drink from the beach house at my Aunt Connie's house, and I went out and drank it, and I drank it as fast as I could, and you know, I was acting a fool anyways. I was in dire need of attention, But when I went out, I snuck out. I went out there. I drank it, and it did something for me that I couldn't do for myself. And then I got a slap in the back of the head because my mom had caught me, and I thought I was slick. Sorry, Mom. And hey, Mom, hey, Dad. But it affected me so greatly that, like, even though I didn't have another drink for 5 years, like, I went to school I came home that summer. I went back to home after the cottage, and like, you know, and you know, we were hanging out on the street, and we'd go back to school. But like, I thought about that drink like for so long, and people misconstrued it as, like, you know, attention deficit. I mean, I was poked and prodded. Like, my parents did everything that they could, you know, they did everything the doctors told them to do. They brought me to therapy, the anger therapy, you know, like, and I would tell them everything that they wanted to hear. And you know, nothing worked. You know, I was just so disgruntled. I felt as though, you know, like, life was unfair. You know, like, certain things had happened and transpired, and you know, I looked at everybody else's life, and I compared. You know, and when I did that, I didn't measure up. You know, like, I didn't have the nuclear family. Like, you know, divorce. My mother divorced, and like, they created another family, and I felt so disconnected from it. And like, I didn't have a sense of self. I didn't have a sense of purpose. I didn't have a sense of direction. And so, you know, I lived on self-will, and you know, time and time again, like, I mean, I remember, you know, being arrested a few times before I was even 18, you know. And, you know, like, this is a progressive thing, you know. If you can't get one, you'll get the other. And then once you get the other, and there's a steady flow, and, you know, like, then it gets introduced to, you know, bigger, better, harder, faster, stronger. And, you know, you talked about, like, what do you talk to the people? Like, how do you get there with people in recovery? And, like, you know, most people, you know, I hear this quote all the time. It's like, you know, this society nowadays is downriver pulling people out of the river, but they're not going upriver to realize, you know, why they're falling in, you know? And like, we have it easy. We have it real easy. And by having it easy, like, we don't have a sense of direction. We don't have a sense of purpose. We don't have, at least for me, like, I didn't have that drive. Like, everything was handed to me. I didn't have to work for anything. Like, I needed and wanted for nothing. My parents are good people. You know, they tried to do right by me, you know? Like, I grew up in the 80s. Like, cash was flowing. Like, yeah, they might have had some of their own financial hardships, but, like, I had the skateboards and the bicycles and everything that I ever wanted and needed. The big wheels, the power wheel, like, all of it, you know? Like, I wasn't not loved, but this internal condition that I didn't know that I had, I wanted to be loved in a way that they couldn't. You know, and you know, today, like, I recognize, like, I'm loved, you know, by a power greater than myself. Like, that was that love that I had been looking for my entire life. I looked for it at the bottom of a spoon, at the bottom of a bottle, at the bottom of a bong, you know. I looked at, you know, for it on the floors of bars after I closed them down, hoping people dropped their drugs, you know. Like, that's where I, you know, I know what desperate looks like. It's utterly disgusting, you know, the things that I would do to get what I needed, you know. And like, I know what desperate looks like, and like, it never filled or gave me a sense of satisfaction. I always needed more, you know. Like, this is a disease, and there's a disease model out there, and like, you know, for the people watching out there, like, it's mind, body, and spirit. It's a threefold illness, you know. It starts with a mental obsession, you know. Once you put a drug in you, you have this abnormal reaction to alcohol, and like, your body calls for more, you know, and there's not a water tower full of vodka, you know, that's gonna be enough. There's not a Sahara desert full of heroin that's gonna be enough. Like, we're always gonna look for the next thing. But the mental obsession and that abnormal reaction, the physical allergy, the compulsion to do it, it's driven by an internal condition. They call it a spiritual malady, a disease of the spirit. And I didn't know that I had that, and I didn't know that that's what I was trying to treat, you know. Like, I expected perfection out of life, and I didn't even know what perfect looked like until I look at, like, you know, the people who are sick and suffering, like that's perfect. The people who are getting blessed and getting sober, that's perfect. You know, the come ups, the come downs, the blessings, the curses, like it's all perfect. It's all supposed to be there.
Tell me something. When did you first realize, not that you had a problem, but that you wanted to get well?
So, I mean, my story differs a little bit than most. Like, I didn't want to get well. I didn't want to stop, you know? Like so many arrests and you know, after the 5th DWI, I was kind of like, all right, like maybe I can't drink in safety. You know, I can't drink, drive and blow into this car, and like, you know, the money ends up running out and the law catches up with you, you know? And like, I know that I was a good person, you know? Like, we're good people trying to get well. We're sick people trying to get well. You know, there's not a bad person in alcohol. I mean, you know, that in alcoholism or in drug addiction.
I couldn't agree more.
You know, they're all good people. That we work hard, we live hard, we love hard, we hate hard, we die hard, though, you know? Like, that's the thing. Like, it kills us, you know? Like, people, like, I'm more worried about my kid, you know, getting mixed up in some substance that gets sprayed with some stupid
what
stuff.
got you into it? You make it sound like it wasn't voluntarily.
Oh, it definitely wasn't. I mean, I was like, by the grace of God, I was separated from alcohol for the last time, June 10, 2015.
And how did that happen?
I was in the depths of my own despair, like, you know, like serious alcoholism, serious drug addiction, you know, marital problems, you know, living in a shack, you know, just never really getting anywhere, no matter how hard I tried. Like, there I was, and like I was the scariest thing that I needed to overcome. And I didn't know that I had potential, you know, like I didn't know how to tap into inner resources. You know, I didn't feel as though that I had the intangibles to get the things done. And I was removed by an arrest, and I spent, you know, 16 months behind bars, and that made me take a real hard look at my life, you know. And it's funny, like,
well, while you were behind bars, I don't know where you were, but did they provide any kind of treatment or counseling?
Education or anything?
So back then, I mean, like, you know, in 2015, like that's when, like, you know, the heroin epidemic started. Like, nobody was really pushing for treatment and resources and none of that stuff until like 2018, 2019, because everybody's mothers and sons and daughters were dying. You know, and nobody was doing anything about it.
Yeah, nobody knew there was an epidemic except those that had already been affected.
Exactly, you know, and so, like, you know, I didn't know to ask for resources. I didn't know to ask for help. You know, I was told, like, you do the crime, you do the time. And so, like, I was like, yeah, I'm a tough guy, you know, crying in my cell at night.
Back then, addiction wasn't so much considered a disease. That's only happened over the last half a dozen years.
I mean, it's been known as a disease, you know, and, you know, journals of medicine and all that stuff. But
but I'm talking the general public.
Well, of course, they kept that a secret, you know. I don't know who they is, but, like, you know, now it's out of the box, you know, because, like, you know, politicians and reformers, you know, they're being affected by it.
Okay, so now you get out of jail.
Do you stay sober when you get out of jail?
Yeah. It was the best, you know, best decision. You know, I was sober long enough and I was clear-minded enough to know that I didn't want that life anymore.
So when you get out, what did you do to stay sober?
So I had a little assistance from the law. I was on probation. I was supposed to be on probation for 5 years. And so I did.
Probation can be a real deterrent, huh?
Yeah, I mean, but I violated plenty of times before. And
we do a family support group. Our parents love it when their kids are on probation.
Yeah, it's great. It's a good deterrent, but there's so many other things and so many things that you can do to pass drugs and tests and all that stuff. But, like, it was a good deterrent for me. You know, like, I had some things that I wanted to get back, you know, like I had some things that I wanted to recover, you know, like I had a family that I wanted to get back to. And so I was trying to do the right thing, and, like, lo and behold, like, walking your kid down the street, you can't get arrested for that, you know? kind of funny how things work like that. You know, you can play at public parks with your daughter and taking, you know, dogs for walks and like going out to eat and not drinking. Like you can't get arrested for that. And I was like, wow, like I gave like this freedom that I had, you know, I took for granted.
You know, one of the things I've always appreciated about those, especially in early recovery, is the gratitude they have for little things like you were just talking about.
Well, when you're getting told what to do, who to live with, who to pee and piss and crap in front of, and like what kind of meals you having every single night of the week, you know, it like when you can leave a room and when you can't, you know, like your freedoms really get, you know, you start to be really appreciative of it, you know, and you don't take advantage of it anymore, you know. There's a certain gratitude you get when you can actually smell fresh air, you know, on the outside and smell, you know, fresh cut grass and like smell chlorine in a pool and not chlorine coming out of a shower stall, you know. It's a little bit, it hits different, you know, when you're sober. You know, it hits different.
Were you in New Hampshire or Massachusetts when you were away?
So I, you know, I lived on the border, so I, you know, hopped, you know, Middleton,
but
you know, Brentwood.
When you were in jail, was it Massachusetts or New Hampshire?
No, it was in, I was supposed to be in Massachusetts, but New Hampshire caught up with me first. And, you know, like I wouldn't have it any other way. Massachusetts has way more, just shout out to Massachusetts. Like I live in New Hampshire, I love New Hampshire, I'm a Shire folk. But Massachusetts has way better resources than anybody out there, maybe California, New York, but you know, it's black and white. You know, it's black and white resources, treatment centers, sober homes, you name it, they have it, and New Hampshire doesn't. You know, it's few and far between, and they're kind of catching up, and they're doing some coalition stuff. But
you're right, it's a shame. If nothing else, Massachusetts has been head and shoulders above anybody, any of these states in this area. And I appreciate you saying that, because we have a lot of our parents live in New Hampshire, and this one here can kind of get them where they're not supposed to be.
Yeah, as a byproduct of me being sober and being inspired and like, you know, having some sort of inspiration, like I got to go back to school, you know, I got to get educated, I got to finish a degree, I got a master's in clinical mental health. You know, like for those of you who didn't think I'd ever amount to anything, like, what's up?
Yeah, and you know what?
How do you like me now?
Yeah, how do you like me now?
And that proves another theory. A lot of these people figure that when somebody's been addicted for so long that they're brain dead.
No, your body auto-corrects itself if you stay sober. You know, and just like try to you know, it's weird. Like a lot of people think that like just because you get sober, you know, your mind clears up and then you can, you know, address everything that you are supposed to address. You know, like the internal conditions, spiritual malady, trauma, whatever you want to call it, it's all the same thing. And for me, like. It was actually backwards, you know, like a lot of the, you know, 12-step programs, they say like if you overcome the spiritual internal condition and you allow a power greater than yourself to enter into your heart and into your mind and let that rule your behaviors, then the physical part changes. You know, and a lot of people get sober and they're still, you know, acting the same way as they were when they were drinking and using.
Yeah, you're 100%
you know?
right.
But like, you know, how do you get a desired change effect like that psyche change, a personality change sufficient to bring about recovery? You know?
I think one of the most amazing things is when you find out that you can actually enjoy being sober.
Oh, I love
that you don't need alcohol or drugs to give you the courage to do things like I'm doing now. Oh, I got a drink here, as a matter of fact. No, I don't. I'm only kidding.
It's weird you say stuff like that. I mean, like there are things that I wouldn't be caught. There'd be a toe tag on my body before I was bowling or playing volleyball or going to, I mean,
cross-country skiing.
Last Saturday night, you know, we're like we threw a painting party for this art gala we're doing, right? And like I would never even pick up a paint, I wouldn't even stroke a paint a brush because I was so afraid. It didn't come out perfect,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And we sat there. We made 16 things for this art gala that we're doing at her house, and like, you know,
Backed into my kitchen. There was like 15 sober
Well,
people.
you know what's
That's
amazing?
awesome.
When you start to feel comfortable with yourself, I don't get embarrassed anymore.
no,
But he
yeah.
embarrasses everyone.
Well, I gotta have some fun.
Yeah, but
no,
there's so
it-
much life to live. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
Well, and that's what it is. I really, what I've learned is, it's no fun being angry.
Yeah.
It's, and especially when you get to my age, you do start to take every day as, I wake up in the morning, I look at the paper, look at the obituaries, Phil Leahy's not there, it's gonna be a good day.
Yeah. I mean, the thing of it is, at least for me, right? Like, it has to be a good day, because if it isn't, I'll drink.
Yeah.
I'll use.
Yeah.
And when I get there, like there's a like contemplating suicide. There's a bullet with my name on the end of that.
Right.
Like exclamation mark. This will bring you to your knees and want you to.
Right, and I'm glad you said that because, I want the people to understand, you guys aren't cured.
No.
You're not cured.
No.
I'm cured, by the way.
Oh, jeepers.
But no, there is no cure.
No.
And you're right. If you try to do everything on your own, you're going to get that urge, and you have to be careful. It's a fight.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things is is the loneliness, the emptiness.
Sure.
And a lot of people like, they talk about the hole in the soul and how it needs to get filled and all that stuff. And like if you don't know, if you feel alone and you can be in a room full of 1,000 people, like there's indicators of that. Like you're not really sharing what's going on in your innermost self to the people that you care about.
Sure.
Like you feel lonely when you realize your friends aren't your friends and they don't have your back. But like I've come to recognize that feeling. Like I've tried to, in recovery and in meditation, I've tried to identify it and change my attitudes and beliefs around that, because that's what we're trying to do here.
Yeah.
Trying to change the stigma that we can get well, that we can recover, and that we can, do things that, alcoholics and drug addicts, say that they can't, And I've tried to identify that feeling as an invitation to go within.
Sure.
Something internally is off, and a power greater than myself, or a spiritual intelligence, or an intuition. You can call it wish, you can call it prayer, you can call it whatever you want to call it. But it's an invitation to go within.
Now I'd like to ask you guys a couple of questions. Like, if you're like,
Ask her a question.
if you're like, they're both. If you're like most kids, you put your parents through hell. What's your
did.
relationship with your family now?
We were just talking about this
Literally.
on the drive here, actually, just reflecting. I was just saying how in the last 2 years, my relationship with my parents, the most important relationship to me, the one that I wished was different my whole entire life, has drastically changed. It took time for them, with all my slips that I talked
Sure,
about,
absolutely.
and getting things back and starting to change a little bit and hanging out with new people, and then just going right back to the old behaviors. There was a lot of broken
Hard to
trust.
build up trust, ain't it?
Yeah, and I get to see it today. I get to see the confidence that they have in me. I realized somewhere very recently inside me that I was blocking myself off from the love that I wanted from them. That they both expressed and loved me in the best way that they knew how. And you were touching a little bit on, like, we want things from the people that we love, but we don't communicate it.
Well, tell me something. When you guys were young, did your parents have an understanding of what addiction was? I mean, did they know much? Did they realize it was a sickness?
Or did you introduce it to them?
I like My parents weren't slouches. You know, they grew up, you know, in the 50s, 60s, 70s. You know, what I didn't know is that they did everything that I did before me, before I was even born.
Okay.
You know, and they were done with it. It was like a phase of their life.
Sure.
You know, and they had the ability to put it down where I didn't.
Right.
You know, and like. They were skivvy and privy to, like, you know, sneaking out, coming home with your red eyes, smelling like booze, you know, or, you know.
Yeah, been there, done that.
Yeah, you know, but like they allowed me, you know, like one of the greatest things is that they allowed me to fall, you know. Like they didn't protect me, you know, they let me have my own experience, and like, you know, no matter how hard I tried to do it my way and failed, like they were always there, you know, they were always there.
Yeah, that's good.
I
Tell
think
me-
one of the hardest things for parents is to allow their children to fall. I remember my parents specifically saying, just die because you're just not getting this. And that was a big turning point for me, because I was like,
Well,
F you, how dare they tell me I'm going to live? Like it was a total reverse psychology for me, and
the
that's
thing
where
is-
I got my
the
motivation.
thing is, parents, you expect, you know, I know you guys had a terrible illness, but being the parent of someone with an illness, I can't think of anything other than losing a child, which and sometimes it might be worse because you're expecting to lose that child every day. And, you know,
wait
that
for
is
the
why we
call,
work
yeah.
so hard trying to show parents the red flags before their kids get affected and so forth like that. But that's for another day. What your parents or your mom put you in treatment very early.
So actually, I called them from college. I was seeing a substance abuse counselor on campus, and she was the one, the counselor was the one who recommended I go inpatient. And my initial thought was me. No, you know, no, I'm all right, you know. And when I called my parents, they had the same reaction, like, you don't need that, you know. And I don't know if it was partly them not wanting to believe how bad things were for me, or
They take it personal.
My
and parents took it personal.
I was so
like, how did I
consumed.
feel? And that this is what you're doing. And
Yeah.
it's like, yeah.
I was so consumed with myself that I was so blind to what I had put them through, or even believing that they worried about me for so long, because I
disease is
had this
selfish,
story in my
self-centered.
head
Yep.
that they didn't love me, that they didn't love me the way that I needed to be loved, and therefore they didn't love me at all, and that lie fueled the separation
You know,
for years.
Before you guys scoot out of here, I think it's only fair to you to tell us what you're doing now.
You wanna go?
I
Sure.
mean, besides sitting on
Yeah.
the couch, I know you're doing
Well,
something
I'm a
else.
mother. My son is 12 years old, which I
Amen.
can't believe. We just entered middle school, and it's a trip. You were talking about a lot of the healing that I've had with my parents is now being a mother and trying to not control him and realizing he's going to fall and slip and cry and get hurt, and I can't do anything about it. I actually was fired from the job of my dreams because of my disease and hired back 3 years later. And
Nice.
so I run a greenhouse department for a local garden center nursery, and we do a lot of, it's cyclical, it's seasonal, so it's interesting because I get to see my growth and my potential grow every year because I'm dealing with the same situations and challenges at work every year, but I'm responding differently. And it's this really amazing opportunity.
You look happy.
I am.
Now you have a glow to you, lady. You
I
have a
am.
glow to you.
How about
I
you,
absolutely
Chris?
am.
What do you do besides sit in the couch here?
I do a lot. I do a lot. I do a lot for God. I do a lot. You know, I don't do his job. I do his work, and I go to meetings. I help other people. I had the ability to go back to school and get my master's in clinical mental health. I work for it's a community It's ACCS. It's Adult Community Clinical Services. I'm about to get licensed. I bought a home. You know, I don't drive a hoopty anymore. I drive a nice car. I have friends and family, people that, you know, show up when asked, and like I show up for them, and like I get to bathe in their blessings, and I get to let them bathe in mine. And
doesn't it feel good when your parents actually want to see you now?
I mean, well, that's
They're right next door. And
Yeah.
I don't have a choice.
that's the thing, you know, like, you know, I make it a point, you know, to try to hang out at my parents' house with my kid,
Sure.
you know, Tuesdays and Thursdays, so they can, you know, be a part of my daughter's life, you know, like
How old are your kids?
my kid is, she just turned 11.
11.
Going on 17.
Yeah.
But like I get to be there, you know what I mean? Like that's one of the biggest things. Like I didn't think that I would ever get to, you know, have my kid back and
Now tell me,
be trusted in that way, you know?
Do your kids know what you've been through?
Subliminally for my kid, you know, she's in the background, she sees what I do, she sees how hard I go, but it gives her, like, she goes hard too, you know, like she goes to swimming, and she goes to dance and ballet, and she goes to school, and she's running around with me all the time, you know, seeing how life really works. And I mean, she'd be the youngest lawyer in history if, you know, if it wasn't that.
Do you expose them
yeah.
to the fellowship? Yeah, good.
For sure, you know.
They
like-
actually grew up together as we grew up together.
Yeah, we got-
they,
Well, that's why I
they're
was gonna
close
ask you,
friends.
because you were active for quite a few years that your child was. So does she understand what you went through? Does she
She has a
understand?
he.
Yeah, my son.
Your son, I'm
yeah. So he was 3 going on 4 when I got sober and stayed sober for 3 years before
Okay.
my slip. And I didn't have an option. I brought him to meetings. We did the headphones and the tablet, and he just started coming around, and he kind of became a part of the fellowship. You know, everyone knew him, and hey, what's up, little buddy? You
So
know,
he has
and
an understanding of.
he does. Yeah, he
That's
doesn't
awesome.
like going anymore. He's
Yeah.
too old for that.
Yep.
You know, and
Yeah, my
which I
kid's the same
respect.
way.
But I'm pretty honest with
That's
him,
great.
and he knows that Mama doesn't drink and that she doesn't use drugs, and that's a big part of. He knows I help people. He sees me meet, you know, at my house with other women, and.
Yeah.
He also sees me actively have a relationship with a higher power, and that's had an impact on him. Everything that I wanted to instill in him, me being sober and active in recovery, has done it just by example.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much he could change from me changing.
Yeah.
Okay, let me ask both of you, we still got a few minutes. What message would you give to parents who have kids that are 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade? What would you tell them that could hopefully prevent them from going down the wrong road?
For me, I'd say that I know you're busy out there trying to provide for them, but it's making it known that there's extra added efforts, and that you're actually genuinely interested in what your kid's got going on, not the absent parent that I could have been, and that I was, and like foster their imagination, foster their inspirations and their dreams, because like they do go away, you know, if you don't, and support them, even if it's like the ideas are so far out there that you can't even imagine doing it yourself. Foster it with them, because it'll create that drive. It'll give them a sense of purpose and a sense of direction. You know, that's what they, as much as they say that they don't need that, like we crave purpose and direction.
So the more they try to push you away, the more you don't let them.
like stand on the firing line with them,
Right.
you know, but let them shoot the guns, you know, like let them have their way, you know, obviously,
To
you
a
know,
degree.
situationally, but be there, you know, like just be there.
And how about you, Nicole?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think the first thing that came to mind is expressing love and compassion, honoring the way that they're feeling, as confused and mixed up as it might be. Sometimes I don't think there's anything that my parents could have said or done differently than they did to change the trajectory of my life.
Sure.
It was laid out for me, and pain is the touchstone to willingness. And so I had to go through what I had to go through. But the expression of love and affection and physical touch and compassion for my feelings, as out there as they might have seemed, you know, I think that would be what I was looking for.
Okay, I just got the 3-minute warning.
I know, so I want to talk about a few fun things that individuals can do in recovery. Every Tuesday, there is free skiing. You learn to ski at Bradford with the Phoenix Club, and the only requirement is 48 hours of sobriety. And I just think that's a beautiful thing. So that's every Tuesday from 5 to 9, and you can go register in advance on the Phoenix app. The Phoenix app is also throughout the country, and it is a gym for individuals because you have to move that energy. And for some people, working out does the same thing for the dopamine, like gets you going and makes you happy, joyous, and free. So it is a free gym open to anyone. So check out the Phoenix. They have the Clear Skies Club, and they also in the summer they'll do yoga on surfboards. They're a great, great organization. And then I do want to bring up the New Hampshire Young People Convention that's coming up, and it's their 24th year. And are you both on the board?
I'm not an active member.
You're not an active member?
I'm an active member, yes.
So this is April 5th through the 7th. It's to rediscover your life, and it's bringing it back to the Margate. All this information in regards to anything that we shared tonight will be on MVP ASAP's Facebook page, or you can contact Phil and myself, or contact Christopher and Nicole to get information about this. So just, you know, we only have a few minutes left. What's a convention like? What would you say if someone's never been to a convention? What can they expect?
A party, a sober party.
Yeah, a party.
Yep.
Just a way to express yourself through different means and modes and modalities, and find connection and, you know, self-expression.
Friends, games, meetings, speakers.
Pool parties, like fire speakers.
All right, I don't mean to
recovery.
interrupt, but this is a live show, and Michelle's getting ready to throw me out.
So,
I want to thank both of you for
yes,
coming.
thank
so
you
much.
so
Really
much.
enjoyed you as guests.
Yes.
Folks, I'm glad you tuned in,
Thanks for
and
having
this
us.
will be, you can watch it, rewatch it. And remember, anything to do with substance abuse, give me, call Methuen Cable, they'll get in touch with you. And that being said, we'll see you next month on The Empty Chair. Bye-bye.
Thank you.